Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. I decided that I was going to make a video on tips and tricks when you're using your Cricut and doing paper crafts. I had a huge learning curve when I first got my Cricut and had a lot of failures, was very disheartened, and wish I'd been able to find a video like this that kind of had all those main tips that you need right in one spot. So if you've been feeling intimidated, frustrated, or just plain lost, or want to know if you're missing a couple tips in your repertoire, then this video is for you. I've got 15 tips and tricks here. So tip number 1, use the right mat. There's two main mats you'll use when you're paper crafting with Cricut. The light grip mat, which is the blue mat, and the standard grip mat. So both mats are labeled. You can see that in the upper right hand corner. Now the majority of your paper crafts will be done on the blue one, but the odd time you'll need to use the green one. So for example, I've got this patterned paper stock. This is very thin. If I put this on the green mat, it would adhere and it would rip as I was pulling it off. Now opposite, I've got this glitter cardstock. It is more of a smooth, shiny backing, and you can see it's got a bit of a bend to it. So the light grip mat would have a hard time holding this down. So I would actually use my standard grip mat for this. I wouldn't use a brand new mat. I would use one that had some use to it and some of the stickiness was gone, and that would hold it down a lot nicer and would be great for the cuts. So tip number 2, make sure that your mat is clean of debris. So I left a little piece of debris. It's on the outside, but let's put it on the inside. So it's stuck on there. When you don't clean those little bits off, it will actually raise the paper in that area, and that is not good. So use your scraper. I've got the extra large scraper. You can see I've got lots of guck on it. It's well loved, and get all those pieces off. So I actually have some bigger pieces down there. So this makes short work of cleaning any mat, and you want those pieces gone, then that way there's no air bubbles in your paper when you lay it down. And when there's no air bubbles, the paper doesn't move. When there is an air bubble, that blade could accidentally cut and rip that section of the paper, and there you have a craft fail, and you don't want that. 3, clean your mats when they need to be cleaned and replace them when they need to be replaced. There's lots of videos out there on how to clean a mat. I use baby wipes. I use unscented and just go in small, light circles just to pull all the fuzz and all that. Let the mat dry, and then it's good to go. If you've cleaned it and there's no stickiness left, I know there's sprays that you could spray on there to get some tackiness. I don't do that because I'd want just the proper stickiness, and it's just easier to use a new mat. Number 4, that cover I just took off, that comes with your mats, never throw those away. Keep it on your mat when your mat is not in use. Make sure you put it on evenly, then you don't have little corners on the edges popping through, because once you start losing that stickiness because it gets dusty, your paper lifts up, you kind of got that air bubble we were talking about before, and it might damage the paper. Number 5, put a piece of tape on the outside portion. This is the one you're going to be handling the most. Your oils in your fingers are going to be touching it, and you're only going to barely touch the other side. Then you know which way goes down. Number 6, you can label this piece of tape. So if you want to keep one mat just for your glitter cardstock, so you get all those little pieces of glitter, you know what I'm talking about, just write glitter on there, and then you know this is my glitter mat. The glitter on there will probably give it away. I actually, when my mat starts to lose its stickiness, I write on there less sticky, and then really sensitive materials I'll use on that mat, and then my 65-pound cardstock I'll use on a more sticky mat. Okay, so now we're going to go into design space here for the next couple ones, so we'll be back. So for tip number 7, you need to choose the right paper. So let's just insert a heart, and we're going to click Make It. We'll leave it where it is on there. Now, when you click on Browse All Materials, right in that area, it will show all the compatible materials with your machine. So it starts with artboard, goes to cardstock. You can pick cardstock for intricate cuts, so keep that in mind. But if you go to all categories, it will show you all the different main categories. So there's one for paper, and this has everything to adhesive backed cardstock, to photo paper, shimmer paper, tattoo paper, tissue paper. So there's quite a bit there. So, you should be able to find something that will work, and that will lead me into tip number 8. Just going back up to the top here, I'm going to click cancel. Yes, we want to cancel this cut. So when you're using a new paper you've never used before, or a different brand, always do a test cut. So take a small shape, half an inch, and do a test cut. Click Make It, keep it up in the corner. You can see it's in the upper left-hand corner, and run it through the machine on whatever paper you think will be the best match with the Cricut options, and check to see how well it cut. Then that way you're not wasting that entire sheet of paper. You're only doing a small test cut. And if the first one doesn't work, you can try again. There's nothing worse than thinking, oh, this is just regular cardstock, and you run it through and it damages your actual paper because it wasn't actually regular cardstock. It was maybe a bit of a lighter cardstock or a heavier cardstock, and the blade just tore through the material, and there goes a sheet wasted. Especially, I find this the most it works best with pattern paper, because I buy a pack of pattern paper that has multiple patterns, so there's only a couple sheets of one pattern. And if I'm making a card and that's the pattern I've chosen, I don't want to waste all that material. So hopefully that will help you out. Okay, so for our next tip, it is make sure you use something to burnish down the paper. So I will show you what I do. We'll take my cover off. I'm going to put my paper down. So instead of using my hands to smooth it down, so right now it's not sticking in a few areas, I actually use the brayer that I got from Cricut, and I just burnish it down. Then that way I know it's fully stuck. It doesn't affect the stickiness of the mat, like you don't have to worry about that. And now it's stuck. So I am happy. Okay, next one is how do you remove the paper? Never pull it up this way, because you're actually going to curl the paper or even tear it. Your best way to do this is flip your mat upside down, use a clean surface. You can take the clear sheet and put that underneath, and you're going to curl the mat and pull the mat away from the paper. So there we go. You can see, I know it's hard to see, but where I pulled it up there, it's sticking up, but everywhere else, it's fine. Okay, when you're removing your designs and you flip it over, and it's a multi-layer design, lay it flat, get your mat out of the way, then flip your design over. So then you have it the right way up. It will save you some confusion and some heartache if you have some pieces one way, some pieces the other way. I do this for all designs, even when they're exactly the same. When you flip them, then I never forget. Okay. I find that when I do something like a mandala cut, there's little tiny cuts and it's hard to kind of get that piece of paper out. So I actually use this Cricut weeding tool, and I will just poke into that paper where it needs to come out. Now another thing I recommend, well, let's get the cover back on this mat. I just told you when you're not using it. So we'll put that back on. So have you ever pulled a piece of paper off and say it's just a heart design and there's a little piece just not quite cut through? Keep an X-Acto knife or a true controlled knife, and once you take it off on a cutting mat, you can just get the tip of the blade in there and make that little cut. If you try and pull it out yourself, you might end up tearing the paper, and you don't want that, especially if you've done all the other tips and tricks to get that far and then ruin it at the very end. Definitely not a fun thing. Okay, the last two tips, they apply to more your blade. So here's what your regular cutting blade looks like on your Cricut. To remove the blade, you just pop it out. I do recommend you use a pair of pliers because that end is very sharp. So my big tip is keep some extra blades around. Keep them in stock, you know, one or two. I started out with just the one blade. It started getting dull. I ordered a second blade and then kicked myself and went, why didn't I order the 5-pack of replacement blades? When you get the blades in, let me pop that guy out. They come with a little cover. When I first saw this, I actually thought it wasn't the proper blade, but the little cover pops off. If I can get this one off. There we go. And that just protects the blade and protects yourself. You do have to remove this cover before you replace the blade. So put that back on so I don't stab myself. Now the last tip is blades get dull. They get dull for numerous reasons. One, cardstock really does a number on these blades. So the more cardstock you do, the more you're going to wear out your blade. Glitter cardstock is a killer for that. So it might be that the blade's just dirty. So a lot of people use the tinfoil ball method. Now you need to be very careful when you do this because you are going to be poking the blade into the tinfoil ball. You want to do it at least 20 to 30 times. If you don't want to do that, if it makes you too nervous, you're scared you're going to poke yourself because this is a sharp blade, take a piece of tinfoil, lay it down, probably on the standard grip mat, and find a design somewhat intricate and just let the blade cut out the tinfoil. The maker can cut tinfoil no problem. So hopefully these tips and tricks will help you be a better paper crafter. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I truly appreciate it, and I appreciate you. Happy crafting!